All right, you are live.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. Uh, Call the January 11th, 2024 meeting of the Financial Advisory Commission to order. We have with us myself, Fred Sussman as chair, Ed Meehan, Frank Brown, Terry Hepworth, and Jim Cardillo, all are commission members. Mr. Bannon, another commission member, is not with us right now. I don't know if he will be joining us. We also have Alderman Arnett, uh, Jody Dickinson, Mike Lyles, city attorney, and Kim Moransky from Finance Department, and Vicki Buckland, assistant city manager. So I think that's everybody on roll call. Uh, I sent out an agenda over the weekend. Uh, any revisions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, seeing none, entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So
moved.
Frank.
All right, moved by Frank Brown, seconded by Jim
Second.
Jim Cardillo. All in favor signify by saying aye or raising your right hand. Opposed, agenda is approved. You have a set of minutes from December 14th, 2023, our last meeting. Kim, thanks for preparing those. Any revisions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the December 14th, 2023 meeting as presented. Motion made by Ed Meehan, seconded by Terry Hepworth. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Okay, let's go to reports. Finance Department. Jody, what do you have for us today? Anything from your?
No, nothing except for the same old list. The ACFR, we've actually got a draft compiled, but I haven't had time to review it yet. So we're hoping to have that finalized by the end of the month. The auditors are completing their work. We're very busy trying to get the budgets put together. Most of the departments have done their first submissions to us, and Katie and Capri are busy pulling those together in OpenGov. We start meeting with them later this month and into February. So the union negotiations also are taking a bit of time. We've got 3 groups that we meet with, and meetings periodically about every other week with each union. And we're moving along there. I am preparing some projections for this year, which I'll be happy to share with everybody as soon as they're completed. We're doing that for all the union preparations. And the staffing, we have some good news. Our procurement office is fully staffed right now. We brought in a temp to fill the senior buyer position. So they're at full staff for the first time in a long time. We do have 3 openings here in finance that we're striving to fill at this moment. We've done the listings and we're trying to find time to do some interviews. So I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions or comments to or for Jody? No, Jody, thanks a lot for your report. I think Mike Malinoff not here. Vicki, what can you report to us from the city manager's office?
So a couple things. The results of the National Community Survey are back. The top line results are actually posted on the city website. So if you go to the city website, annapolis.gov/NCS, you'll find the report linked there. The company that does that survey is also actually presenting at the council session on January 18th. So they'll go into a little bit more of how the survey's done and what the particular results are for the city of Annapolis. So we're very happy about that. Obviously, you showed some places where the city has some opportunities, but also showed some areas of strength as well. if you're curious, definitely listen in on the 18th to that presentation by Polco.
Go ahead and then I'll ask you a question.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, is there anything you can share with us about the results from a 20,000 foot level?
Yeah, so generally speaking, the survey looks at 10 different aspects of livability in communities. And that ranges from economy, safety, transportation, utilities, recreation and parks and stuff like that. And it asks questions that are both about how important do you think this thing is to you, and what do you think of the quality of the services provided by your local jurisdiction. So the heart of the survey from Polco's perspective is kind of this matrix of quality versus importance, and how well do those things align with each other. And so to the extent that you have things that either are more important but of lesser quality, or that are far away from that kind of line, right, where those two things are equal, those are the opportunities. So in the case of the city, the area that got sort of the highest rating, where that comparison between quality and importance was best, was actually recreation and parks. And the places where the city struggled the most was in safety and in mobility, transportation, parking, more than just parking. But there are questions then inside of that to kind of elucidate a little bit more what's inside those numbers. But overall, especially for a first time doing this survey in a long time, the city was actually very much in line with what you see in jurisdictions across the country. There were, out of the, about 125-ish questions that they benchmark, the city was in line with kind of where most jurisdictions are on about 100 of them. We were above the national average on 5, and struggled more than the national average in, I believe it was 19 of them. So not bad at all. And actually for a first time doing it for a while, considerably better than a lot of other jurisdictions that they work with where it's the first time. The other thing I was really happy about, and thanks to council members like Alderman Arnett, we had actually a good response. The error rate range for the survey, they were actually able to bring that in. Normally they're trying to get about 5% error range, and we had enough of a response to knock that down to 4, which sort of doesn't sound like a lot, but for a first time especially, Polco was really, really impressed that we had, again, for a first time out, that we had enough of a response that we actually, in some jurisdictions, they're having to actually go out to try to get more response. And in our case, we actually sort of not overperformed, but we did well. And so I was really happy about that. So
Let me ask you a question, Vicki, if I may.
Mhm.
And that is, okay, so the city spent a fair amount of money having the survey done. You have the results. So where from here? Is it used by the mayor and council and administration to set priorities for budgeting purposes, or
yeah, yep, to help inform budgeting priorities, and also to get a sense of, we have access to some crosstab information, so it's also to get a sense of, in this particular area, where would we start, right? So if we're going to tackle if we're going to tackle mobility questions, where does that pain point seem to be strongest, right? So it gives us some opportunities to do a little bit of targeting as well. I hope that answered that question.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Before you continue with your city manager's report, do any of the commission members have any questions or comments for Vicki about the community survey and what she reported? No? Okay. I think I cut you off when you were still in the middle of giving your report, so I was interested in the community
No,
survey.
actually, for the second part, I'm actually going to try to bring in Alderman Arnett. So we actually did have the retreat. I was I was COVID positive on that particular day, so I was listening in remotely. I actually was not physically there. So although I heard a lot, there was stuff I missed as well. But it was a very energized, it sounded session, and a good discussion around ideas and priorities. So I don't know, Alderman Arnett, if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, I'd say the overall, we have more work to do, but we're making progress. Part of our problem at the retreat was we had too many ideas. And
in other words, nobody was bashful about speaking up.
No, and it was participation by senior management and the council. And I felt very collegial, but we're going to have to go through another exercise to sort of zero in on the high priority action items for the strategic plan. But I mean, it's a process, and it's a new process to us. I think Annapolis is used to, the analogy I think is sort of herding cats. And so we have a lot of A personalities and a lot of strong ideas. And the real challenge is going to be to focus them and get them into something productive. And I would just say also, the community survey, I think, is going to be extremely helpful in telling us where we have to actually actualize the strategic plan. The places where we're in the lower left-hand quadrant clearly are the ones that we need to be paying more attention to. So that, are we going to do the survey annually or biannually?
Most jurisdictions do it every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so we have some areas to improve, and that's always good to have some guidance. I mean, this is coming from the people that we represent, and it should also guide the strategic plan, which in my worldview would guide the performance measures for each of the departments. So I think we're making very good progress. I was disappointed we didn't get further along in the exercise. In fact, I think we declared victory and ended about an hour and a half early, but that was because we had 7 different focus areas, and each one of them had at least 22 action items. And obviously we can do anything, but we can't do everything. So we're going to continue to work on it.
Great. Thank you, Alderman Arnett, for your comments. Vicki, anything else?
Nope.
No. All right. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, Audit Committee. Jim,
Thank you.
Favorite topic.
Thank you, Fred. The audit committee met on December 18th, the week before Christmas. The 2 topics that primarily were discussed, as Vicki mentioned, the upcoming retreat, the strategic plan retreat. And the purpose for the audit committee will be that the audit committee was instrumental in implementing performance measures for department heads that they would be ranked and evaluated on alongside their financial budget performance. So both their operational performance and their budget performance would be evaluated. So that was the audit committee was instrumental in introducing those two pieces together. Then there was some further discussion with regards to an ongoing issue with contracts with the city. But again, the audit committee still seeks additional members.
Thank you, Jim. Jim, did you have an opportunity to, not that it was your responsibility to, but did you reach out to anybody to see if you find a replacement?
Yes, I've had a couple of conversations with one of the city staff who handles boards and commission staffing, Hillary Raftovich, and she was receptive to it. I gave her some suggestions, and we will follow up. I followed up with her on Monday this week. I've not heard back yet, but I will follow up again. So we continue to seek new avenues for, and she felt that the recommendations I had made to her would be beneficial not just to the audit committee, but to other boards and commissions that she assists in staffing as well.
Okay, what I was really referring to was for several meetings now, you've said you would like to be replaced with a different FAC representative. That's what I was kind of asking about.
Oh, with regards to that, it's an ongoing topic. Again, I continue to
All
serve
right,
as a designee.
But Jim, let me put the rest of the FAC members on standby here and ask if any of the FAC members, that's Ed, Perry, Frank, are interested in taking Jim's place on the audit committee. No pressure here, but just seeing, try to recruit. Seeing none for right now, Jim, still yours for the time being.
Understood, sir. I'm happy to continue.
All right, great. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank goodness.
Thank you, Mr. Arnett.
Okay, going down to unfinished business, I think Vicky covered topics A and B, the community survey results and the leadership retreat. So that brings us down to the 2024 FAC annual report. The annual report is something that every city board and commission needs to prepare and done annually and submitted to the city council just to give an idea of what the various city boards and commissions are doing. Kim has been very helpful in putting together the FAC's annual report for the past several years, and then we sent out the draft annual report to you for review. It's nothing fancy, and it follows the same format as we've used year after year, and as I think is directed by the city administration for the city code. Does anybody have any questions about the draft annual report? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the draft annual report and authorize its distribution to appropriate city officials. Somebody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Moved by Frank Brown, seconded by
Second.
Jim Cardillo. Thank you. Any discussion?
I couldn't believe I missed 2 meetings.
Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. The 2024 annual report is approved. I would ask Kim to take responsibility for putting it in appropriate format with transmittal and send it off to whoever it needs to get sent off to in the city government. Kim, will you take care of that, please?
Affirmative.
All right, great. All right. We'll come to item 5D on the agenda. FAC officers elections. According to, I believe, the city code, we need to elect our officers each year. I've served as chair for many, many years now, I am certainly happy to give it up if somebody would like to take my place as chair. If not, for the time being, I'll continue on if that's the wish of the commission. So let me throw it open there, see if there are any volunteers to take my place, and if not, entertain a motion. Well, I'm not going to make a motion to approve myself, but
I will be more than happy to do so. I so move that Mr. Fred Sussman continue in his position as chairman of the FACT committee.
I second Mr. Brown's motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? So if at any time, assuming that the vote is affirmative, that I continue on, for the time being. I'll just ask FACT members if you see anything I'm not doing right or you want me to do differently, please speak up. I value your input. So all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you for the vote of confidence, greatly appreciated. Next we come to the position of vice chair. That's been vacant since Bob Burden left. And important, if anything untoward happens to me, or if I decide time to hang it up or whatever, we need somebody to step in, somebody great to step in. So of all you greatnesses out there, who is willing to submit their name for nomination election to the position of vice chair?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Cardillo.
I reached you offline and indicated that if there was not a vice chair candidate among the commission, I would step to that position.
All right, so you offering your name and nomination for self-nominated for the position of vice chair?
If a member of the commission wishes to nominate me, I will not decline.
Okay, so we have one person expressing an interest or a willingness, let's put it that way, a willingness to be vice chair. Anybody else? We're going to have a contested election here.
I would just second and or support Mr. Cardillo as vice chair.
Okay.
I'll go second and third, Mr.
All right, we have a motion made by Mr. Hepworth, seconded by Mr. Brown to elect Mr. Cardillo as vice chair. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye or raising your right hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Well, congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair. I can
Thank
sit
you.
down now, right? Because there's somebody.
There you are, sir. Yes. Yeah, you didn't ask for abstentions. I abstained.
There's something method behind my madness. Madness behind my method or whatever. So Jim, thanks a lot. Look forward to having you on board as Vice Chair with me.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next we come down to new business. I sent out the U3 Economics of Community Design study that has been prepared for the city. Alderman Schandelmeyer asked that we, look at this, and I was expecting him and also Chief of Comprehensive Planning, Eric Lashinsky, to be here to discuss it. I know Alderman Schandelmeyer takes a bus into work every morning, and I told him about the timing here. He said he'd be here around 9. I said, we need you earlier if possible. So he said he would take an earlier bus. That being said, he's not on the screen, nor is Mr. Lashinsky, who I understood was going to be joining us. I'm going to ask Vicky, would you do me a favor and you reach out to planning and zoning and see if Mr. Lashinsky is available? If he's not, then we'll just talk about it among ourselves. And let's just take a brief recess while Vicky reaches out to Eric Lashinsky.
I'm not sure that Mr. Lashinsky is on the address list for the link, so somebody might have to send him a link. If he
I
gets,
think it was, I think Kim sent it to him yesterday, didn't you, Kim?
oh, okay, because I see Brooks on here. And I might be missing it among all the names.
And Mr. Waschinsky is not on the original distribution list, but Alderman Chandler asked if we could send them the link. And I believe that Kim did send them the link yesterday. Did you, Kim?
Just in case, I can send that to him again right now.
Okay.
I reached out via text and email. So as soon as I hear anything, I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, let's give him a minute or two.
Oh, he says jumping on in a minute.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ross, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oops, where's my hand? Yes. I think that I just, as it happened, had a conversation about this yesterday with Chris Jakubiak. And depending upon how far this body wants to carry this discussion, I think it would be very interesting to have the director of planning. He and I were talking about the department doing much more planning. That's what this very definitely speaks to. And I think that that would be a value, again, I'm not sure exactly what the fact would do with this. The council has seen it. So it'll be interesting to see what you do with this.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I know what we would do with it, but Alderman Chandler asked us to be aware of it, be familiar with it, so that we can see where we go from there. Alderman, good morning, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
How are you?
Doing fine.
Good, good, good. We were just waiting for Eric to jump on, but because you're here, we can get started with this discussion. And your timing is impeccable. You just finished the rest of the agenda and right here with the study. So
Yeah.
I'd appreciate it if you, and we distributed the U3 report to the commission members the other day. I asked them to review it. I looked at it. So could you just give us an overview of what it's all about? And perhaps your thoughts as to how it might be beneficial to the work that the FACT does?
Certainly. So one of the things that I was interested in is the city has consistently had a structural deficit, and how we approach this is always an answer of gut spending, which hurts a lot of constituents, because I have a lot of constituents that rely on the various programs that we use, whether it's police, fire, childcare assistance, transportation, or raise taxes, which also hurts a lot of citizens because that's a lot of extra money coming out of their pocket. And the reason I wanted to pioneer this is I wanted to show that there is a third, better way that is better land use. So Urban 3 was the company that we contracted with. They have a great deal of experience in doing these land value studies where they're able to break down land value per acre and expenditure per acre. The first part of this study was completed to showcase the land value per acre. And it was pretty interesting. It actually had a couple things that I wasn't expecting in there as well. But yeah, the goal is to give us a better policy tool for the Financial Advisory Committee to make additional recommendations or make some additional or be aware of some additional ways to get the city on a more sustainable financial footing. So I guess, do you want me to showcase it off or showcase off some of the presentations and findings that we found, or do we want to wait for Eric, or what's the...
Eric was just here, but he's not right now. I don't mind if you continue on, but let me ask you this question. How do you see, from your view of the world as an older person, that the result of this study, can be beneficial to the fact, and how might we use it? That's number one. And number two, it seems that from my layman's quick review of it, that the bottom line of that study is that the more dense and intensely used, the higher the land values, and correspondingly, the more you're going to get in tax revenues.
Well, not necessarily. So actually, one of the interesting things found was that townhomes generate more revenue per acre than larger apartment complexes, which was not something I was expecting. So I was pretty pleased to find out about that. It's also showcasing the building type and design. Our major part of our retail areas in the majority of the city, which were built after zoning, are dominated by giant strip malls with parking lots that are much bigger than the buildings themselves. And the primary example of this is you look at the Bay Ridge Giant, which generates only $1.1 million per acre. I could be off by 0.1, but it's a large complex that generates an embarrassingly low value. Then you compare that to other areas built before zoning, small coffee shops like the coffee shop over in West Annapolis, that generates about 10 million. You look at the design patterns in like downtown, it's legalizing these types of smaller scale retail operations with a lower footprint, putting them in the neighborhoods like we used to do, and what makes Annapolis the charming place that it is when people think of, oh, look, Annapolis is so great. But we allow and require this more sprawly, dense, or sprawly development style and pattern on the majority of our land. And it is a big reason why we cannot actually even maintain our own infrastructure. And I'm going to be very honest. Our three options are, again, cut services, which will hurt people, raise taxes, which will hurt people, or do better land use, which will let us do a lot of the stuff that we say we want to do, like be welcoming, be more environmentally sustainable, be more fiscally sustainable. So anyway, Eric is here so he can correct any of my math or presentation points that I get wrong. And one of the reasons that I also wanted to get this on people's radar is we do have the upcoming comprehensive plan. And a lot of these stuff that we found in the Urban 3 study, the comp plan is advocating for. So by accepting this in the comprehensive plan, accepting that this way is a better financial sustainability metric for the city, I'm hoping the FAC can say the comp plan is good. I know that may not seem part of your wheelhouse, but everybody's saying this is a good plan. It is a good path forward to the city for genuine fiscal stability from your standpoint. Helps us out. So in that case, I'll showcase some of the, I'm sorry, my internet's not cooperating. I got to try to re-download the report. I apologize.
That's all right. In the meantime, let me welcome Eric Lashinsky, Chief of Comprehensive Planning. Is that it, Eric?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Nice to have you with us.
Good to be with you. Sorry, I couldn't be here at 8, but
no, that's fine.
so I don't know when the discussion. Okay.
We've just gotten through the rest of the agenda, and this is the last item on the agenda, and you're very timely. So thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Sometimes my connection isn't great. Okay.
No, hear you fine.
Okay, good. One of the things I would add to what the alderman said that I think is really critical is that it's not so much density, it's the mixed use aspect where you're putting compatible land uses closer together where they make sense. And so, you basically build value that way. So some of the projects that the Alderman referenced are exactly that. They're not enormous developments per se. They're small footprint, but they require a lot less infrastructure to be serviced. They put services closer to where people live, so you don't have to build, expanded roadways or other underground utilities to service them. And so that's one takeaway so far. The other thing that the Alderman mentioned, which I think is really key, is it's sort of about incrementalism. When the report so far showed us that townhomes provide a really remarkable uptick in assessed value over single-family detached homes and more than multifamily in most cases. That to me suggested there's a sort of an incremental value there that you don't have to go sort of from 0 to 60, so to speak, but we can go back to some of the things that defined Annapolis as a place historically, the types of homes and mixed use development that was on smaller footprint that, it's really defined the character and experience of the city. So that, from the comprehensive planning perspective, I talk to a lot of people in the city, and of course there's always concern about change and, what's going to happen in the future. And so I'm constantly reminding people that we really don't have to do these dramatic changes. We can really make incremental changes, and that would be based on what we've learned from this study. It would provide a potentially enormous financial benefit to the city, for our the services we provide. So that's something we've learned so far. I don't know if the Alderman mentioned, but the project has only looked at assessed values so far, has not looked at the costs of servicing the properties. And so that's really the next step. I think that's, in a way that's kind of the important to really find a takeaway from this. I think we're going to need to factor that in, of course. And so that's part of this project as well. And the consultant is putting together a financial model that basically helps to explain how the costs impact the assessed value or the value per acre, I should say. So that's pretty key.
Let me ask you a question. Just thinking this through, is part of your thinking, Alderman, that you can use or would like to use the results of this study as support for incentive-based legislation to promote or encourage the more desirable development patterns that the studies may be showing?
Yes, well, as you couldn't tell from my colleague's more cynical commentary on this study, making and change these types of changing is difficult even, and I believe that getting more of these commissions, committees, and community members on board by seeing some of the benefits is useful.
Alderman Arnett?
Since I was mentioned as being cynical, first of all, I totally agree with my colleague's notion that there's more than two ways to balance the budget. You can cut services or increase taxes, and I agree there is an alternative. I also agree with Mr. Lashinsky that we can have more productive uses through mixed use. But I think Mr. Lashinsky also talked about the very critical variable that we have to yet look at. It's the after effects of increased density that we need to plan for. And that is all of the transportation needs, all of the other things that come with higher density. Higher density is nothing new. It's with the advent of cities in the world, they're higher density. And they can be good density, or they can be Northern Virginia type density. And to me, it's that second step, the after effects planning, that is going to make the difference between palatability. So we can't just say, we've made it more dense, we're done. We're going to have to look at what we do and how we manage the effects of that density. But in terms of the primary thesis, I'm in total agreement with my colleague. There is another way that we can increase revenue, but it is Mr. Lashinsky's follow-on study that will tell you, did we increase revenue but increase expenses even more by having to provide services like more robust transportation? And that is the other side of the equation, and we have yet to do that work. But again, I certainly applaud this. I agree with the surprise about the finding. The cover, I would say, is a little off-putting because it looks like we're going to have high-rise apartment and office buildings in the middle of downtown. I don't know that anyone wants that, but we could have lesser density places that are of higher height that are spread out in the surrounding parts of the city, but then we have to service that. So I applaud the exercise, and I wait for the second half of it.
So the expenditure info is going to be very interesting to get. We're working on that. So I can't figure out a way to do this ideally, but I do have a decent workaround if you'll let me share my screen, and I can kind of showcase some of the presentation highlights.
Sure.
Alrighty. So can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
The Urban 3 part. So the cover sheet to address, there is I do understand why people would get worried about seeing these giant bars and it looking like massive high rises. So that actually is not the size of the building. What that is demonstrating is just kind of the general thing that Urban 3 does. That is the revenue per acre generated. Now that's a map of Auckland, New Zealand, which is one of the cities where they've worked. And as you can see, these giant spikes where everything is very high and colors of purple and red, that is Auckland's downtown. It kind of showcases the power of downtown development and mixed use. So in these other areas, they are farther out from the center and more into other types of business districts. I don't know much about Auckland. I just know that that is their downtown. So Annapolis, Maryland, some of the interesting facts here are we have our total taxable value in land broken down for various parts of the city, which is very interesting. But the key thing, especially in a smaller city like ours, is the taxable value per acre. So we do have some issues with a lot of government buildings, a lot of public housing facilities here in our city, where good chunks of our land is dominated by facilities that we cannot get tax revenue out of. And in my mind, that makes ensuring that the land that we do have is as fiscally productive as we can make it. Just a fun fact that I do like to point out, in that this is not necessarily based on property value or traditional income seen. If we look at Hunt Meadow here in my ward, a large, wealthier neighborhood, it has an okay tax revenue per acre. But if we look here over on Clay Street, it has a higher value per acre, which when your presentations, when you look at them, you can zoom in a little bit further. But that's interesting to me because Clay Street is traditionally seen as crime-ridden, poverty-ridden. Whether or not that's fair, I don't think so, but it is definitely a lower income than Hunt Meadow. But even though we've done all these things like tear down large chunks of it to build public housing, to build parking garages, to build office space for the county, Clay Street is still more revenue generating for the city of Annapolis. One of the interesting things that I did not know is here is a general map of the city's value per acre. The largest portion right here is Park Place Condo, which is a very intense type of development style. That's one that the city put some investment in, but it looks to be like it's more than making that up. And it's now the biggest revenue generator, not just for the city, but for all of Anne Arundel County, is Park Place condos. We also have the traditional downtown. I did not find that portion surprising. We all expected downtown to be one of the bigger revenue generators. We have some of these areas out in Parole, which I believe this little purple mark in the Parole area is the Bell West Apartments. Eric, do you remember if that's what it was?
Actually, that's the farthest west. That's the town, the towns at Neal Farm, the townhomes that are built right off of Old Solomon's Island Road, kind of tucked off. Yeah, so that's a little bit surprising, but can I just also add about the Park Place development? I think it's really important to acknowledge that, as far as I know, that is the one and only project in the city's history that was a tax increment financing project, where the city basically essentially invested partly in the infrastructure to help that project, knowing that it was going to lead to, with the hope that it was going to have a huge benefit to the city over time. And well, that's what happened. And so I think it kind of shows that we make policy decisions all the time, trying to, in hopes of having a benefit on the overall city's economic picture. And we hope they pan out. And this one really did. And I think you could say the same about just the entire inner West Street corridor, where the city invested quite a bit of money over the years, streetscape improvements and such, parking garage, so.
Yeah. And then you look at this as a wider out map of the county, and I find this is really less for the facts policy recommendation, just more interesting. The entire map of the county, you can see that Annapolis is the genuine economic engine of our county, and then we have a couple small spikes here and there throughout the rest of the area. But what I like to say is this kind of shows how land use patterns really matter for overall economic productivity. These are some of the productivity ratios. As I said earlier, we all know that the city is our economic hub for here in Anne Arundel County. And one of the things that I was very interested, though, here's a tax exempt land versus taxable land. Land use types was one of the more interesting portions of this for me, and where I really think that we as a city need to address our fundamental land use if we're going to be on a more financially sustainable path. They use Walmart as kind of the generic example of value per acre for sprawl style development. Most people know what a Walmart is. The city does not have a Walmart, but we do have a lot of low density, big box building style developments in city limits. So average Walmart type of development is $1.1 million per acre. Residential land use, the average land use of these detached single family homes is about single family homes is about $1.8 million per acre in the city. Not bad. So here's a breakdown of a couple of the neighborhoods. And again, one of the things I like to point out, Hunt Meadow is 1.3 million per acre. Clay Street is 2 million. And we need to keep this in mind. This isn't necessarily about income level. This isn't necessarily about how high end the neighborhood is seen or is. This is just based on types of homes and types of development patterns in each of these neighborhoods. Some more breakdowns of home types. Downtown and the Bell West Apartments in Eastport are some of the higher revenue generators. Downtown and Eastport, both older neighborhoods built before zoning was implemented, so they have some of these other development patterns and styles. Bell West was a redevelopment into mixed use of apartments, retail, and food. So that type of development pattern is seen to be a little bit more financially productive. I see a couple questions. I guess I'll answer them as we come along. Jody was the first one I saw.
Yeah, a couple questions. One, is there a supplemental report that they provided us with a discussion of the implications of the property values? Because all I have is this PowerPoint of all the maps, and I didn't know.
This is just a preliminary. This is really like I would say 30% of the project so far. So it's very preliminary. The final report will definitely go into an analysis, Jody.
Okay.
their methodology and.
All right. And then I wanted to confirm, did they remove from these analyses the tax exempt properties? I mean, when they're saying this area like Clay Street or that region, they're saying what's the value per acre? Would they remove the government buildings that are in that area?
They did. They did.
No,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's my question.
They're really just looking at the properties that are assessed value. Yeah.
Well, they're
Uh,
okay. I'm
Barry?
sorry.
Well, I guess what I want to say when they highlighted Clay Street, they're talking about they are removing the tax exempt properties, and they're only looking at the properties that are assessed within that corridor. So.
And I did my best to zoom in, but you can see some of these grayed out areas from the taxable versus exempt land. These grayed out areas are the government buildings and the public housing communities that we do not have the ability to tax. So there are these little chunks of green, which are the higher value than the wealthier Hunt Meadow neighborhood. Mr. Perry, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. And apologies if actually if you pause right on this page, I think the residential 1.8 million. I was and again, if you've explained it, I apologize. But can you explain what that? So for a single family acre, it generates revenue of 1.8 million, or it's valued at 1.8 million, and is that from a year? Like, explain that. That's where's that revenue generated from?
It's actually assessed value. So it's not the revenue, it's the assessed value. And I think these are 2022 values. So in some cases they might, for certain properties, 2023 might be higher. But as far as I know, they use 2022 values from SSTAT, the state's tax assessment database.
Okay, so these are the values. So again, from like a Walmart acreage 1.1 to, and then is there an inference here in so far as what the revenue is generating? I guess what's the value of understanding the value of what's the value of the information, knowing the valuation of the properties?
So we won't know until we do the cost analysis. We won't really have a sense of I don't know that we're actually going to get the exact revenue, but we won't know the sort of net value until we do the cost analysis. But the inference here is that there are certain types of development that don't yield the same amount of a tax assessment because of certain features they have, the pattern of development, et cetera.
But is tax assessment, I guess this is where I'm struggling, and apologies for that, but is tax assessment equivalent to valuations?
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
That when they say value per acre, it's tax assessment value per acre, essentially.
Okay, so then what, again, the inference here then is a single family acre will yield higher revenue in taxes versus the commercial Walmart acre.
Yeah. And we have some of the big box stores type developments where we get specifically into them. Walmart is again just kind of their generic example of big box style development, which again, we don't have any of that we don't have Walmarts in the city, but we do have a lot of big box style, and we'll get down to some of that for the commercial assessments. And it's going to be really fascinating. Some of these larger properties in the city that take up giant chunks of land are some of our least financially productive areas. Jim?
Thanks, Alderman Schandelmeyer.
And I would just also say,
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Eric.
Can I just add one more clarification? I mean, they're showing the Walmart average on each of these slides more as a just a baseline. They're not. The idea is not to compare the single family home to the Walmart. I think we're still going to be interested in comparing land use to land use, but it's just to kind of give people a sense of what we're talking about as a baseline. So you're going to see that Walmart average kind of throughout the presentation, regardless of the land.
Jim?
Thanks. I think Eric mentioned earlier that the assessment is set at the SDAT, the state level performs the assessed values of properties, correct?
No, as far as I know, Jody can correct me, but no, the values are assessed at the county level, but
I'm
the
sorry,
state
thank you.
keeps,
Okay, so
they
the
have a
values are,
database. They have a database that's maintained by the state
oh,
where
okay.
you can just
Then,
look up any property and find it's
and the
assessed that
assessment, the assessment is done, there are different methodologies of assessment based on the type of property, correct? Be it residential, be it commercial. Like the way that the value is
That's
assessed is
definitely
different.
beyond my
Jody?
expertise.
All right, but I
yeah.
guess what I'm kind of
Jody, why
looking
don't
for.
you, Jody, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, I wanted to say that the assessments of the properties are conducted by the state, and they're fed into the SDAT.
Okay.
They have a division for each county, so there is an SDAT division for Anne Arundel County,
Okay.
and they do their assessments in 3-year, and everybody gets a 3-year rotation. And then it goes into their database, and then the database is fed to the county. The county does those property tax billings and sends us our piece based on our tax rates and our property values within the city.
So do we share this information with the State Department of Assessments and Taxation? Is there a possibility for a rethinking of how these properties are assessed?
So I know when the assessors go out, they take a lot of things into consideration, and this is not my area of expertise. For instance, when they have, they use different criteria when they're looking at a single family home versus when they're looking at an apartment building, and what they use to value it. It's not always, here's an acre, here's the value. It's apartment buildings are valued based on like income generated per acre or something. There's other criteria depending on the use of the property. And I'm sure that Urban 3 understands this. And I think there's a big step that needs to be done yet, because there's a lot of things to take into consideration here. Like Walmart may have lower property tax value, assessed value per acre, but they generate a huge amount of sales tax for governments. So there's an income earning potential. And for instance, our short-term rentals are a certain amount per acre property taxes, but they also generate a lot of occupancy taxes for the city. So there's other incomes flowing into the properties that probably will go into the overall analysis of when you say, here's a value for what we have. What else are they giving us? What do they cost? As we talked, what does it cost to maintain that property for the city in city services? So I hope I.
Ross, did you have a question?
I have an observation. I think one of the richest slides here is the productivity ratio for the county. And it shows Annapolis as having this high value per acre, which I'm pretty sure is correct, but it is the 5th or 6th largest generator of revenue, far lower than, say, the airport or the complexes at Fort Meade. And it also is of a much different generation of development. So to me, getting underneath the hood of this particular slide is work needing to be done and could be very informative. It is true that the newer regions of the county that are the high income production are newer than the city of Annapolis, but I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned there.
I would love the county to do a portion of this as well. I'm happy to share this part with the county, but yeah. Anyway,
I think Urban 3 may have done a separate study for the county that was, I don't think it was really that robust, but I'll find out. They did do a third party program. I think they did analysis of the county. I'll see if I can find that.
Anyway, residential. So 1.8 million per acre was the single family average here in the city of Annapolis. some of these newer development types of residential patterns, they're either the older neighborhoods built before zoning that allow those types of gentle density that and incrementalism before our current zoning code was implemented, or it's these mixed use properties um, like Bell West Annapolis that have a pretty significant revenue generating. The average multifamily housing is 2.5 million per acre. Here's just a couple of the things that they showed us. Duplexes are about 3.5, townhomes are about 17, and downtown duplexes, which might not surprise anyone, are very valuable because the value of downtowns is always, in all the studies that Urban 3 has done, shown to be like the biggest driver of economic success in cities. So our average townhome though is about 4.2 million per acre. Park Place is the significant, as we showed earlier, Park Place is the biggest revenue generator for not just the city, but the entire county. And here's something that I wasn't expecting though. When you look at the averages, townhomes had a higher revenue per acre than multifamily, like apartments and condos. I was expecting it to just kind of be generally increase as it went up, but this was fascinating. And now I'm going to be advocating less for apartments, I guess. I don't know. But no, this is just shows though, like the development type and residential development pattern shows that how we build impacts city finances overall. Now we don't have the expenditure data yet, but if it is consistent with other cities, it's going to show again that the more spread out you have housing, or the more spread out you have development patterns, the more infrastructure costs are associated with it. Commercial is where I'm really fascinated by, and this is going to show us like some of the least productive land uses in the city. The Bay Ridge Giant area generates 1.1 million despite being this massive thing. The Safeway generates 1.2, and the large Kohl's property generates 1.5. So these are the giant strip malls that are the most comparable to the Walmart development style. Large parking lots, low spread out types of retail that everyone has to get in their car and drive to. And it dominates most of the commercial patterns in the city of Annapolis in every neighborhood built after zoning.
And when you say generates, again, you're not saying it generates 1.1 million in revenue.
Correct. It's just its value is 1.1 million per acre. And that's not even getting into the expenditures yet. My theory, and this is just my theory, I don't have this data yet, so you can take it with a grain of salt or you can take it with a giant tablespoon of salt, is that when we get the infrastructure spending, these areas are actually a revenue loss for the city. And that would be consistent with every other study that Urban 3 has done in this type of development pattern. But the older, smaller scale retail is significantly more financially resilient. We have Bean Rush Cafe, that was the coffee shop I couldn't think of the name of in West Annapolis, generates 6.5 despite being about the size of a single family home, and right in the neighborhood, it generates a very significant amount of revenue it generates a very significant amount of taxable value for the city. So these small incorporating different types of low scale retail can be very financially productive for us, along with bringing services that people like closer to neighborhoods. Main Street and downtown retail this will shock no one again, one of the highest generators for the city. Downtowns are always financially productive. And one good thing about Annapolis is downtown is very, it's very traditional, and that means a good amount of revenue per acre for the city. Hey, Russ.
So, but look at the empty space above downtown. I think this is a real opportunity. That's why we're doing the sprinkler fund, and we really do need to encourage that mixed use development above the buildings, which I also think would be a lovely lifestyle to live right on Main Street or in the heart of downtown in a residential area. So there's a lot of potential there, which I think would increase the value of the homes even more.
I fully agree. I don't have any specific numbers for that, but as we saw, more mixed use types generate more revenue per acre, and that would be increasing the type of mixed use development. I think most of us would be in agreement that that would be another way to make downtown more financially productive. But even without that, we're still seeing a very strong type of revenue with this development pattern. So this kind of showcases some of the taxable value per acre in a little bit more detail. Oh, does anyone have any questions on the other parts of like retail and commercial that I was showing? Nope, hearing none. Cool. So the rest of this is kind of showcasing some of the different the taxable value per acre, similar to some of the other slides that we've seen. And here it is with development types and some specific developments here in the city itself. Bell West on Annapolis, redevelopment on Upper West Street showcases a lot of economic potential. Giant Food is showcasing a lot of lack of economic potential. And then just some of the residential neighborhoods like Enclave Court here in Ward 5 and Hunt Meadow in Ward 5, and these different types of building patterns are pretty striking in taxable value per acre. So I am looking forward to getting the expenditure data so we can kind of showcase a little bit more on what could potentially be revenue negative for our city and what can be more revenue positive with based upon our building patterns and what is and is not allowed. But yeah, that's the first part of our completed study. And does anyone have any further questions or for Eric or I to explain or? Seeing none.
If not, thank you very, very much, Alderman and Eric.
Yeah.
Oh, Jim has a
Sorry.
question.
Has this been shown to the planning commission?
I don't know.
No, it hasn't. There was a work session with city council before the holidays, but it has not been shown to the planning commission yet. And we're happy to come back when we have more information on the study in a couple months, I think, to your commission as well.
Okay. Thanks. I was just thinking because they deal with zoning and exception issues, and I was just wondering if that was of relevance to them.
It's definitely something we're planning to do, but wanted to have a little more information first.
Thank you.
I wanted to get this in front of you guys because I'd put this on your radar back when we were first like trying to get funding approved for it, and it was slowly trickling down the pipeline. So this is part one of a multi-part follow-up.
Thank you very, very much. I do have a question though. Thinking about it, and your comparison of the Dock Street area, $63 million per acre, and Giant Foods, 1.8 or something $1 million per acre. Now, that doesn't necessarily correspond to property revenue generated though, right? Because that Dock Street Bar and Grill may be 1/10 of an acre. So that may be 6.3 assessed value. Giant site may be 5 acres. So even though per acre is only 1.8, still may, for assessed value and tax purposes, maybe $6, $7, $8 million. Is that accurate?
So
generality
per parcel, you could make the argument that the Giant unit as one taxable entity generates more, but the Urban 3 likes to do it per acre because the valuable and finite resource that the city has is its land. So we do not have enough land to do a giant style. You look at it like this: if we had a lot of types of giant style development, that would dominate most of the acres, and that would be less financially productive than something a lot more compact and closer in. And while downtown, I think, is very interesting just to kind of showcase the type of resources that downtown can bring, what I think is a better thing to compare commercial wise is these types of properties, these like in some of the other neighborhoods outside of downtown. So 6.5 million per acre, but it's only taking up this small amount of space. If more types of acres looked like Bean Rush and less like Giant, we could have more revenue per acre. So even though the Giant could be seen as a larger taxable entity, when you get down to the smaller portions of what we can actually tax in the city land, the that smaller, more integrated type of development is more financially productive.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Jody, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, so I think we need to keep in mind that every slide you see here is a per acre assessed value. So you show a little house and it doesn't take up that much space, but the Safeway is equal to 20 of those or something. So you would show a picture of 20 houses versus the Safeway to get the comparison. It's an acre is an acre, and the assessed value per acre is the same, and the tax rate per acre is the same. So you have a smaller home, but it could never replace something that's housing, 100 families or something. So you have to look at the acreage. It's all one measurement unit. We tax based on acreage. So, I'm sorry, we tax based on assessed value, but these are all measuring their value, their assessed value per acre. So I'm just keep in mind that building may take up smaller space and therefore it won't generate the assessed value per acre. It'll generate a smaller percentage of the assessed value per acre. So I just want everybody to remember that when you're looking at.
Yeah, I think that was the point I was trying to make, Jody. Not
Yeah.
you much more articulately than I did, but so thank you.
I don't know. I didn't see that. My explanation was very articulate. I'm talking in circles, but it's all acreage, and it takes, it takes more of the smaller homes to fill an acre. So keep that in mind, and they're not going to generate an acre worth of taxes. They're going to generate 1/10 of an acre of taxes. So
Right.
Right. If I could
try to
jump,
keep that measure.
I guess
You're still sharing your screen, actually. I don't know if you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
what I was hearing, Fred, if I might jump in, is that basically we need to take in consideration that it's proportionate. Not every house is an acre.
Right.
Right.
Okay, next, I think Alderman Arnett had his hand up, then Eric.
Yeah, so remember, we're focusing on property tax, which unfortunately for the city is our principal source of revenue. But if you focused on income tax or you focused on sales tax, you would see an entirely different picture. And the bane for me, ever since I've been on the council, is if the state would only share just a farthing of the property tax with us that we generate out of the city, life in the city would be quite different. And so this is only one form of taxation. It is the principal source of revenue for the city. So we're forced to look at this, but there are other revenue sources and other ways that we can share. I've always wondered if we really get a fair shake on our share of the income tax. The county apportions that to us, and we get about 17% of the income tax paid in the county. But there are other tax issues, and there are other revenues and other generating factors. So we have to remember this is a narrow focus on one area.
What I like to focus on this though is because we do have land. Property taxes are what we can do. While there are revenue sources for the state that they can get directly and we can hold our hand out and ask for some, this type of revenue generating is our main expenditure. Infrastructure is our main expenditure, and services are our main expenditure, and land taxes are our main income source. So this is really a useful tool to look at for cities that lets us kind of comprehend and pick out how does our pattern of land use impact our overall finances.
But you pointed out three sources: cut taxes, cut spending, or do this. Another source is a more fair sharing of other tax revenues that could help the city budget immeasurably. So I'm not disagreeing with you at all, Alderman. This is our 72% of our revenue comes from property tax. It's the only tool we have. And I think it puts a very unfair burden and a distortion on development because of that. But there are other ways that we could generate or get some revenue that would be fair.
Okay, Eric, I see your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah. One of the ways I've come to think about that value per acre metric is it's kind of an efficiency quotient, or a way of describing how efficient that land is being used. And because, yeah, we're comparing apples and oranges, apples and oranges, it seems, but kind of bringing things back to the comprehensive plan, we obviously live in a city that is mostly built out. And so growth in the future in the city in terms of development growth is going to be related to improving properties within the city that are generally previously built upon. So it sort of behooves us to look at property in the city that is both serving the goals of the city, from a quality of life, economic value, environmental value, et cetera, and understand what we could be doing to make more value on those properties, and it's just, sort of be blunt like that. But I think that we can all kind of look at properties in the city that have large underutilized parking lots that could be far better used. And it's not just about economic, environmental value is a big part of that too. It's something that is hard to quantify at times, but so that's kind of why this is valuable from a comprehensive planning perspective. We're certainly not going to be, redeveloping whole swaths of the city. It's very surgical and strategic at this point in the city's history. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Thank you very much for that explanation, Eric. Jody, I see your hands up, or was that from before?
Just to talk about how much these are real estate taxes, and that is about 60-ish% of our budget.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Alderman and Eric, thank you very, very much for a very enlightening and interesting presentation. I look forward to hearing more. And I think it's just, it was beneficial to the group, even though it's not directly tied to, what we do, but it gives, I think, a good perspective for us when we're, being asked to look at different financial issues. So thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. I think pardon?
I was saying, happy to be here. You're welcome.
Yeah, and when we get the expenditure data, we'll definitely be coming back, showcasing some of that. Eric, do you have a timeline on that, or
probably in March? I would say March or April. Yeah.
There we go.
All right, great. Look forward to it. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order today? Eric, did I see you raise your hand? No. Okay, just an FYI, everybody, our May is usually very busy for us in budget season. I am ecstatic that we have a vice chair now, because I'm going to be away for a few weeks in the middle of May, long planned vacation. So do what I can when I'm here, but I'm not doing city budget work across the world. So in any event, I'm sure we'll all manage. Next meeting is February 8th, 8 o'clock, Zoom. Any last good of the order items? If not, thanks everybody for coming and for participating. I think very healthy, good, interesting discussion today on our last topic. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Perry Hepworth, seconded by Ed Meehan. All in favor?